Okay, so alongside the Daytona 24-hour, we also have the WRC Monte Carlo Rally, the season opener of the WRC as it goes into, as I mentioned, its second year of the Rally 1 hybrid regulations, which were aimed at kind of really changing up the grid, but we've seen, unfortunately, the low manufacturer count that we have in WRC at the moment. It's left a relatively static running order at the front, but for Rovanperä, 2022 was an incredible year for him in that Toyota. We saw the showcase of one of the finest talents in world motorsport, one of the most dominant rally championships in the last few years, and an incredible example of the speed, the bravery, and the connection with his co-driver, of course, that Rovanperä has. He'll be looking to take the victory in Monte Carlo. One of the most important events. It's a bit like the Daytona 500 in the NASCAR Cup Series, in that it's the opening event of the calendar for the year, but also one of the most important, which is a little bit backwards to the way most people would run promotion. But it's a massive event, not only for the WRC, but also for the country of Monaco, for the tourist businesses around the area. That spectacular, snowy, long distance, high speed racing is pretty unique, and there's a reason why it's one of the oldest concurrent motorsport events. It actually was started, sorry, by Prince Albert I of Monaco. I suppose granddad of the current Prince Albert of Monaco in 1911. The idea at the time was to showcase vehicle improvements and to kind of draw tourists to Monaco, who at the time was basically a castle, and then they kind of came up with this casino, and everything kind of popped off for Monaco there. But the rally's been a huge part, just like the Grand Prix, of the history of Monaco, of their connection with automobile culture and their kind of centralness to the racing world. It's a 3-hour-ish rally. When you add up all the time stages, last year took place over 17 stages and 296 kilometers of rallying. There are stages, of course, not stages, but there are road sections as well in between the stages, and you've got this whole setup of rally with the service parks. One of the brilliant things about rally for first time viewers that you'll see is drivers operating on their own cars. So a brilliant thing that happens, and we'll definitely see at Monte Carlo, is examples. People get punctures and they're like, oh shit, what are we going to do about the puncture? Pull over to the side of the road, jack up the car, and you change the wheel yourself, mate, because you're on the clock. And you don't, they really practice. It's like watching a Formula One pit stop with how quickly can you change a tire. But imagine Lewis Hamilton hops out, does his own tire change, does his front jack, then his tire off, then his wheel gun back on. It's a little bit slower than that, of course, in WRC, but it's one of those kind of brilliant things where I think it's just the spirit of rally, where no, mate, you get out and you operate on your own car when you break it. As I mentioned, Kalle Rovanperä, defending WRC champion. The Finn is one of the finest talents in world motorsport. The only problem is when I was doing the research for this video, the research for the segment, his Wikipedia picture, if you go Kalle Rovanperä Wikipedia, or maybe it's 2022 WRC Wikipedia, the picture they've got of Rovanperä is diabolical, and I might look into changing it for him, because I'll pop it on screen now if it's still up there. But I think we'll all agree that with the talent that we have in the motorsport photographer community, we can do a bit better than that. But for Rovanperä, besides his dodgy Wikipedia picture, he's looking into a pretty perfect setup. Of course, sticking with the same team, sticking with the same co-driver for 2023, and looking to go back-to-back, just like we saw Max Verstappen do in 2022 in Formula One. So we will see. In terms of the other teams on the grid, Ford are fielding Ott Tänak, taking him away from Hyundai. He's a 2019 WRC champion from Estonia, and Ford are also running in their factory team Pierre-Louis Loeb, the 2019 WRC2 winner, dropping Gus Greensmith and Oliver Solberg back down to WRC2. A big decision, tough really for Greensmith. He was one of the best kind of representations of British talent, and that's my nationalistic bias kicking in there. But I did like Greensmith, and it was very emotional for him, I remember, last year to get that stage win. It wasn't at Monte Carlo, but it was a kind of a huge signifying moment of him being, not one of these rich kid talents so much, but one of these, true talents that had been with Ford for a long time, and to deliver a stage win for him was hugely emotional. But he's unfortunately back down to WRC2, and there's going to be a lot of eyes on Loubet in that factory Ford seat. There's also a bit of news getting back to Formula One, as I also tried to do with the Cadillac news in the Daytona 24-hour. Cyril Abiteboul again, picture on screen here. Squirrel Irritable, as he is known by Christian Horner, because he was the boss of the Renault Formula One team at the time where Renault and Red Bull, well, I suppose there was rarely a time where Renault and Red Bull weren't fighting, because even through the V8 years when they took their constructors' crown, they felt they were held back by their engine power and always having to make up the difference themselves. To some extent, I think that was absolutely true, and we saw that performance really take a hit at the start of the hybrid era, where a team like Red Bull, who had been known for their incredible chassis, their driver lineup, their kind of pyramid that kept bringing forward new, amazing, fast young drivers like Max, like Daniel, like Seb, like Pierre, like Alex. List goes on and on. Carlos Sainz, of course, too. Um, had taken this massive step back, and a beat Bull was a little bit scapegoated for that by Red Bull, basically, kind of creating this tension between Renault, a team whose factory Formula One like team outfit was behind a team that they were selling engines to in Red Bull, which is never a good look. And is again a pretty convincing piece of evidence that the engine was holding back Red Bull, and just the forward jumps Red Bull made going to Honda and then now kind of rebadging that Honda themselves and looking to put a Red Bull logo on their engine. It was a tough time for a Beat Bull, and of course also with Daniel Ricciardo signing for Renault and then breaking that contract to go to McLaren. A Beat Bull said he would likely live to regret that jump, and relative performance of Alpine and McLaren is pretty similar. But we've seen Daniel Ricciardo now leave Formula One. Anyway, Cyril Abiteboul is the new team principal of Hyundai, who are looking to take a crown this year. The standout driver from last year, in terms of like a new driver on the scene, was Craig Breen. He was in that Hyundai outfit, and almost was a bit like of an audition. And he did really, really, really well, and outperformed his equipment on multiple occasions, and kind of drew the talent eye of Hyundai, and has been kind of re-signed to share a seat with Danny Sordo. You've got Esa-Pekka Lappi and Thierry Neuville. Of course, Thierry Neuville, I believe, competed for the championship, but did he win the champion? I'm going to put that up in the edit, because I'm not going to redo this take, because there's already been a few goes at this. Toyota, of course, returning with Rovanperä and Elfyn Evans, who so narrowly missed out on the 2020, I believe, WRC title. Evans, again, a Welshman, one of the finest British talents when he's winning, and one of the finest Welsh talents when he's not doing so well. But he's looking to make the charge on Rovanperä, really, because you would always expect Toyota to have the best recruitment as the defending champions. They know they've got the best driver, they've got the best kind of chance, the best bookie odds at winning the WRC crown this year, and Evans knows he's got that same access that Rovanperä has. We'll see how well it goes. For any evidence of just how dramatic the 2022 Monte Carlo Rally was, you can look back to the battle between Sébastien Loeb and Sébastien Ogier that happened in that 2022 rally, went right down to the final minutes of Sunday, and was an absolute showcase of two drivers pushing each other, pushing the cars, pushing the grip and the tyres, and the bravery and the balls of their co-drivers as well, and the skills, of course, of their co-drivers to the absolute maximum. Sébastien Loeb winning that. And I believe, again, the put up picture of him and his co-driver celebrating on top of the car. But I believe there was a story going around that his co-driver is a full-time maths teacher who does rally co-driving on the side. And in 2020, of course, then went on to win that battle for the WRC Monte Carlo Rally crown with Sébastien Loeb, a record equaling 8th Monte Carlo Rally victory for Loeb. Was pretty outstanding. I think, yeah, taking that right up until the final minutes of Sunday was a pretty incredible challenge, and again, would highly recommend anyone looking to watch the rally this year, just check out some of those highlights and see how difficult, how twisty and windy these stages are, and just how brutal those conditions can be. A patch of ice in the wrong place and you're in the fence without doing anything wrong. That's the brutal aspect of rallying. Sometimes you can do nothing wrong and still be in the fence, and that's the drama, that's the passion that is so dramatic when you see someone finally win. The emotions that come pouring out, you know that you've survived one of the finest challenges in world motorsport. Now, unfortunately, we can't talk about rally and the off-road racing world without talking about something that is really sad, and something that I never wanted to have to talk about. I don't think anyone ever did. But there's been, of course, some incredible tributes within the last week to Ken Block, the legend of skateboarding and of rallying, and privateer racing and stunt driving and everything. A man who really changed the game and changed what being a motorsport personality meant. The bravery, the creativity behind those Gymkhana videos changed just how cool off-road racing could be, and the numbers would astound anyone. But we saw throughout the years that series evolve, the partnership with Subaru, and then went on to Ford, how it scaled up through the years with Ford and the Hoonicorn and the Fiesta days, and like many people, the first time I ever heard of Ken was, through the Gymkhana videos and through his appearances on Top Gear and Top Gear UK, because even back then when I was a little kid, Top Gear was like my source of what was in the motorsport world, and what was cool, and where the best personalities were. It was always a special moment, like when the Formula One drivers would go on Top Gear. I always remember those as a kid, thinking they felt like special moments, and they would always lean forward when the lap times would come out, a bit like I'm doing now. But for Ken Block in those days, I just remember him as doing something that I'd never, no one had ever seen before, pushing these stunts, flips, drifts round trains and motocross bikes. And, there's one like through the tram in San Francisco, which is ridiculous. And personally, my favorite is the road in China. Again, I'll throw a still up on that now. Arguably one of the finest roads in the world, and the Gymkhana, I think 10 that was made there, was elite. But it's really hard to know what to say in moments like this with Ken. I think anyone that was a fan of his YouTube channels will really be sending their hearts out to Leah, his daughter, and of course the rest of the Block family. The patriarch that he was of that family, the passion that he shared with everyone he met, and any evidence of just what an amazing guy it seems like he was, can be shown by where the tributes are, how emotional the tributes are, just how caught off guard everyone was by this loss, and a small quiet touch of class from the WRC is retiring the 43 number that Ken competed with. Just like anyone would, you retire a number in motorsport, you retire a number in the NFL and football and basketball, for someone who could never be replaced and should never be replaced. And that's exactly what they've done for Ken Block. Really, really tough to know, but again, his personality, that infectious joy, that was shared among hundreds of millions of people through those videos, and just the scale of his impact will still be shown for the rest of the time, and will not be lost with him. And I think the best way to honor that is to continue to source it as inspiration. And of course, yeah, really, really tough, and a bit of a downer, but there's no two ways about that. It's a sad thing, and something that I had to talk about, because to not talk about it would be to not do it justice. But I think that can wrap up our off road segment there.